What if I told you you're comparing yourself even if you think you're not? And it's exhausting you in a way you can't quite name. And it's not comparing yourself to other people, but to yourself, an older version of you that had clarity, or perhaps a future version you feel like you should already be. So even on days where you feel like nothing is wrong, you still feel behind because you're standing in the middle, no longer who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. And no one talks about how disorienting this space is. If you felt this, that quiet sense of being neither here nor there, or even rest doesn't settle you, just know you're not imagining it. This is real and it has a shape. Most people think comparison only happens when we look at others, someone else's career, someone else's body, someone else's life that looks more together. And sure, that happens. But there's another kind of comparison that's quieter and more persistent. It's the comparison between who you are right now and who you thought you'd be by now. Maybe you're 42. You thought by now you'd have more clarity about your career, or your relationships would feel more stable, or you'd finally feel like an adult who has it all together. Instead, you wake up some mornings and you think, I still don't know what I'm doing. Or maybe you're 35 and you thought by now the path would be clear, that you'd have found your people, that purpose would feel obvious. Instead, you're reconsidering everything. And the version of you who was so certain at 25 feels like a stranger. There's also the future version, the one you can almost see, the one who's figured it out, who's lighter, who's stopped performing. That version exists in your mind. And every time you don't act like it yet, every time you fall back into old patterns, you feel like you're failing. So you're caught between the past self you've outgrown and the future self you haven't embodied yet. And the present just feels uncomfortable. Here's what makes this particular kind of comparison so exhausting. You can't escape it. When you compare yourself to someone else, you can eventually look away. You can close the app and remind yourself their life isn't yours. But when the comparison is internal, when it's between versions of yourself, there's nowhere to look away from. The old version shows up in your habits, in the way you respond to stress, in the choices you default to when you're not thinking. That version is still there. And part of you resents that version for not disappearing faster. The future version shows up in your aspirations, in the books you buy but don't read, guilty, in the plans you make but don't follow through on. That version is there too. And part of you resents that version for being so far away. So the present moment, the only moment you actually inhabit, becomes this tense, unsettled space. You're neither who you were nor who you're becoming. You're just here. And here doesn't have a name yet. It doesn't have clarity. It doesn't even have instructions. This is why motivation won't work right now, why advice feels irritating, why just take the next step sounds hollow. You're not stuck, you're unanchored. The old anchors, the ones that held you steady for years, have loosened, and the new ones haven't set yet, so you're adrift. Not because something's wrong, but because you're between moorings. If this is landing somewhere in you, if you've been carrying this feeling without quite knowing how to name it, go ahead and tap the like button. Not for me, just as a small acknowledgement to yourself. To acknowledge, yes, this is what I've been feeling. Because sometimes just naming it helps to take a little weight off. Carl Jung wrote about this. He studied people going through major life transitions, midlife especially, and he noticed a pattern. He called it the confusion of opposites, the old self pulling you backwards and the new self not fully formed yet, both existing at the same time. Jung said that midlife, and really any major life transition, asks us to hold opposites without collapsing into either one. The part of you that wants security, the part that's exhausted, and the part that wants to create something new. The part that knows who you were, and the part that doesn't know what you're becoming. He didn't see this as confusion. He saw it as becoming. The confusion itself is the doorway. But here's what nobody tells you about thresholds. You have to cross them slowly, mindfully. You can't rush through. You can't force your way to the other side. You have to let the crossing happen at its own pace. You can't force clarity. You can't think your way into the next version of yourself. You have to let the old version soften. You have to let the new version organize itself slowly. And in the meantime, you live in the in-between. It doesn't have to be a crisis. It's a crossing. So what does this phase ask of you? Not answers, not action. It asks for something harder. It asks for patience with yourself while things are unresolved. The ability to wake up and not know yet and be okay with the not knowing. To stop measuring yourself against who you used to be or who you think you should be. And to start asking different questions. Not, why am I not there yet? But what's quietly shifting? Not exasperatedly asking, what's wrong with me? But what's trying to loosen? Because while it feels like nothing is happening, while you're just sitting in this uncomfortable middle, a lot is actually reorganizing. Your values are recalibrating. Your nervous system is adjusting. Your sense of what matters is quietly rearranging itself. You're not doing nothing. You're doing something that doesn't show up as progress, not yet. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling this way. You're not failing to move forward. You're just between the versions of yourself. And that space feels quieter, but heavier and more uncomfortable than anyone prepares you for. The old you hasn't fully left, and the new you hasn't fully arrived. And the you that exists right now is learning how to hold both without needing to resolve it yet. That's not confusion. That's this glorious place of integration. And integration doesn't happen by force. It happens by being present, by showing up to each day as whoever you are that day, not who you were, not who you will be, but who you actually are right now. And that's enough. If you want to stay with these conversations, the kind that name what you're feeling without rushing you to fix it, I invite you to subscribe. Not for answers, just for company while things are still taking shape. Because this work, the work of becoming, doesn't happen alone.